Welcome back to another video guys, SmackYoG here, and today I'm going to be talking about role queue in Marvel Rivals. Well, really, the lack thereof in this game. Now, this may be seen as a controversial topic, with some people sharing my opinion while others don't, but let's be honest. This game gets a lot of comparison to Overwatch, which historically speaking is a 6v6 hero shooter which actually adopted a role queue. Now, for that game, this change was necessary, so let's talk about the pros. Off the bat, you're guaranteed 2 players in each role, so it's going to make it less frustrating if everyone wants to insta-lock DPS. That's just going to balance the game and make it much smoother to play with a 2-2-2 comp, so no worries about a GOATS meta or anything similar. I know you've played Rivals and you had the game where you're the only support with a team full of 5 DPS, 5 different duelists, or you're the only Vanguard, 4 DPS, and a strategist. It gets annoying. I'm not gonna lie, there's been points where I just ego chow other people and I just choose DPS to see if they will, humble themselves and go support, humble themselves and go Vanguard. Again, those aren't bad roles per se, but you definitely see DPS as the most entertaining, the most fun role to choose. You're clearly the damage dealer of the team, so it's definitely going to be the shooter part of the hero shooter genre, right? It's just more fun to play. So yeah, that's one of the pros off the bat. You're just gonna have seamless balancing for just the composition. It's gonna be more fair. You're gonna expect 2 tanks, you're gonna expect 2 DPS, you're gonna expect 2 supports. Nothing too crazy. So that's what we saw with Overwatch. To be fair, they still have an open queue mode available for those who don't want to do the role queue. Now, going off of that, people will be more likely to stay in a role and choose their favorite one. So they'll probably get better with tank, and they'd rather just go that role than play open queue and go feel the need to go tank if their tank is selling. Same thing with support, same thing with DPS. They're just gonna stick in one role, the role that they're good at, the role that they enjoy, and it's more likely they just pick one role and get good at it. Now I think that's good and all, but there's still issues with role queue that may come into play. I think off the bat, we could talk about the queue times. We saw with Overwatch that those roles, they make the queue times crazy long. And I know there was a lot of, issues with that in the past. Historically speaking, it's been really bad. You definitely see the most being in DPS. That is the most, fun role to play per se. So you're going to have a lot of people queuing up for that. Now, to combat this, some people would rather pick roles to get quicker queue times so they can play the game as compared to waiting to play a specific role. So if I'm just kicking it, if I want to just have fun on a random day, I don't want to wait to play the game, I'd rather go tank or support rather than sit there and wait to play a DPS role. So that's one of the big cons, I'd say, is just the time. Now recently there's been, changes with that. The perk system made a lot of people come back to the game and have more fun with a lot more characters, a lot more versatility. It's pretty much a new game in and of itself at this point, at this stage of its lifetime. So, now it isn't that bad with Overwatch. But it still definitely is an issue and something to look out for. Now, going off of that, you're stuck with the 2-2-2 composition. You can't change roles mid-game if you're playing a role queue. So if you're a tank, supports, or DPS are selling the game, you can't swap over and carry. You're stuck in that role and may lose a game to incompetent teammates. If my DPS are selling, there's not much I can do besides be a better tank. Create more space, focus our weaknesses and focus the enemy's weaknesses. Try going shield, try making space, stuff like that if I'm a tank. Now if my tank is selling and I'm a support, there's not much I can do there, just support the team. So that gets annoying. And, looking at this game as a whole, especially with the ever-expanding roster, this game is catering a lot towards team-ups. Now, with the amount of team-ups they have, the amount of characters they have, it would kind of restrict the creativity in a team if you're stuck with a 2-2-2 composition. There's less creativity, and you can't play around with different team compositions. There's the creation of GOATs, which came, and some people say ruined the game for Overwatch, but some people like playing around the idea. There could be a ton of different fun ways to play the game, and you could make things like a full dive comp, 3 DPS, 3 supports, just more fun playing around with different comps as compared to just a 2-2-2 composition. And with that team up feature, that huge roster that, again, like I said, it's ever expanding. A new character every single month is absolutely absurd. Props to the dev team. I love to see it. But with that team up feature, there will be so many different team ups that the game will cater towards certain synergies and stacking them with different heroes, which may or may not require multiple tanks, DPS, or support. I mean, look, I like playing Magneto. I'm very upset that they got rid of the Scarlet Witch team up. I think that works perfectly for him, and it makes him a viable solo Vanguard. If you get the Metallic Chaos, where you get the huge broadsword, does even more damage, and you're just a huge, you're an amazing solo tank. So picking players like that, picking specific heroes based on your team, and working towards those synergies is a lot better than making a role queue. I don't think Marvel Rivals needs a role queue. So an alternative to role queue would be a role lock, which I've seen a lot of people talk about. It would just limit the number of roles to a set amount. Most people are saying three. I think 3 or 4 is perfect. Yeah, that way you can at least get a Vanguard in, a strategist in. You can have the 3 DPS, but that's not too crazy. So overall, Rivals doesn't need a role queue, as it would just make this game stale. It'll have balance issues, create a similar sense of frustration to Overwatch, and it generally doesn't need it right now because the game is so fresh and new. It's still in its infancy. If they do end up doing some route like this, a role lock system might work better, where a specific role is capped at 3, so we don't get a full DPS stack. But again, focus on those team ups is really essential to the game. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Catch y'all in the next one.